Hello, I'm back, and this is my AR Project 4. So starting off the scene, we can once again see our cryptic cube here in the environment. For the first of my tangible operations, I decided to use a distance operation. So we see this chicken picture is back, and whenever I slide it further away from the cube, it makes our cube bigger. Just going to pick up the cube to show that even this chicken is like backer and the cube is bigger, we can still pick it up and move it around and manipulate it in the real world just like we would expect for an AR application. So we're just gonna shrink the cube back to regular size and then just remove the chicken picture just so that way we don't have to worry about it growing and shrinking for the rest of the demo. So for the next of my tangible operations, I decided to do, I guess this would probably be distance or proximity, but I essentially just checked for a collision between my two AR objects here. So we have the matchstick, and whenever the match hits the cube, you can see that it sets the cube on fire. We can simply just tap it again with the match to put the cube out from fire. Um, so then for my third tangible operation, this one's a proximity interaction. So we can see that whenever I bring my other little cube here onto the scene and flash it, it'll cause the cube to open. Same thing, whenever I flash it, it'll cause the cube to close. So we can see that. I'm just going to leave the cube open here. And then for my final tangible operation, as you can hear, there's that screaming effect. And this is based on the rotation of the cube relative to the camera. So whenever you take the camera and directly face it at our little internal mat cube, we get this nice loud screaming effect. So that's it for that. Be as swift as possible. Most of our interactions are focused around our cryptic cube option, as we saw during the demo portion. So this is a pretty simple setup. As we showed in the last demo, it has all of just these false fronts. I won't get into that. If you're curious, check out my last video. It has a personal fire script, so this is directly tied to the match. Our match simply just checks if it enters a trigger that's tied to our cryptic cube. It checks the overall tagline, and then it starts this fire script. We covered this fire script in a former video, so again, if you're curious about how that kind of works, feel free to check that out. But going on, outside of that trigger for our match interaction, if we go to our mat cube, it also has this little raycast acceptor, which is just a very tiny box collider that is set up to match the same spot and the same area as our internal mat cube. So this is just a script that is attached to our AR camera called our Scream Activator. So if we go and look at how this one does, it simply is just raycasting whenever the cube is open so that we can actually see the mat cube. It applies a layer mask, and the mat cube is set to a very specific layer just so that way it can only really raycast that so we don't have extra interactions with our trigger boxes. Then it just checks that the tag is the right one, and if it is, then it starts a little audio script to make the cube start screaming. So getting into the bulk of our cube code here, we already saw our animate script formerly. This pretty much works the same, but the only difference is now um, our cube object is a singleton. So whenever our other cube is activated on the scene, it simply just has some Vuforia scripts that take the instance of our singleton and set it to open. So that's pretty straightforward. Furthermore, going into our cube touch here, we can see this is the start scream function that was called by the other one whenever the raycast activates. So we just check that the cube is open and that the scream isn't already playing. Additionally, we have some cleanup functions for whenever the tracking is lost. So we'll stop the cube from screaming, just if the tracking is lost. And then additionally, if the cube is ever closed by our other object, we'll stop the cube from screaming. So finally, getting into our scale manager script, I just made a little singleton to keep track of where our chicken is and where our cube is relative to each other and whether or not they're currently being tracked. So then our cube touch simply just checks that singleton, and if both of them are active and being tracked, we calculate the distance between them and we apply a scaling. I clamp the minimum scale at the default scale, and then I clamp a maximum scale just so it can't get too big and start taking up our whole screen.